Story continued from Hell Creek playlist. Clouds cover the midday sun, and the wind sends a soothing breeze through the forest. A pair of Acheroraptors sleep in the cover of a large fern, but are awoken by a loud crack that breaks the serene silence. The dromaeosaurs lift their heads slightly in surprise, and a few seconds later, a second crack echoes through the trees. They recognize the sound and with a yawn, curl back up and return to sleeping. The source of the noise is coming from deeper in the forest, belonging to one of the most unique dinosaur families of the late Cretaceous. Sphaerotholus are 1.5 meter long herbivores. The armored skulls clear indications of what family they belong to, the Pachycephalosaurs. Though much smaller than their more famous relative, Pachycephalosaurus itself, like them, they are built to take part in the activity that made their family famous: headbutting. Rarely used against predators, these thick-headed reptiles save such activities for each other, though it's usually the males that do so, and only in the breeding season. That time is now, and different areas of the forest echo with the sound of clashing skulls. Sometimes only one, other times a series of them. Sometimes multiple fights are happening simultaneously, and an animal may be surrounded by the noise. One male hasn't had to fight so far this season, his authority over the harem of females that he protects unchallenged. This is in part due to his size and age. As a large male in his prime, often other males looking to take over his herd back down after simply sizing up to him. This is in many ways the best outcome. Every fight has the possibility of serious injury, and when your method of proving yourself means slamming your head into someone else's head, over and over again, even a win can be dangerous. The downside is that the breeding season brings the males into rut, whether they are going to be able to mate or not, and this results in increased aggression, and with no challenges to take it out on, he's charged multiple small animals over the last few days, and even an unlucky Anzu, who, despite being much larger, decided it was better to flee than get his ankle caved in by the stout Sphaerotholus. The herd of 9 adults and 16 juveniles continue to graze and keep a lookout for predators. The usual noises of Torosaurus herds trotting through the undergrowth and the ever-present calls of birds are occasionally interrupted by the resounding crack of skull connecting with skull. The sound of other Sphaerotholus approaching gets the lead male's attention, and from behind the thick trees comes 3 more of their kind, 2 females and a male comparable in size to the group's leader. The newcomer looks over this group and decides he wants all these females to himself. The resident male approaches and lifts himself up to his full height, before turning his head from side to side, showing off his skull and the various nodes and spikes that adorn it. The challenger does the same, and when neither backs down, they start grunting at each other, each trying to intimidate, but it becomes apparent both are evenly matched, so it has to come down to a physical fight. The 2 take a few paces back, and the rest of the Sphaerotholus clear a space for the confrontation. The newcomer, younger and more impatient, snorts and charges. The older male responds by breaking into his own charge. Right before they hit, each rears their head back and then swings them forward, resulting in the tops of their skulls slamming into each other with maximum force. The crack of the collision bursts out from the point of impact like a gunshot, making nearby birds flinch or take flight. Even the other Sphaerotholus, used to this type of behavior, flinch from the sheer force on display. Each male recoils off of each other, but don't show any sign of injury. They feel it though. Even with all the reinforced bone their species has evolved over millions of years, they feel it intently, but will do all they can to not show any weakness to an opponent. Round 2 starts, and they back up again, before charging just as fast as last time, and smashing against one another with power that would in almost any other dinosaur family mean instant death. The males look over each other. Once again, no clear winner can be decided, but the younger male now has a twitch in his left eye, and his head sways slightly. Despite this, both males line up and run at each other again, and for a third round, the gut-churning thud pierces the air, but this time is joined by a groan of pain. The younger male stumbles back trying to stand still, but his world is spinning. Not only that, but a sizable dent is now clear on the top right side of his head dome. The older male gives him a chance to get his bearings, but the challenger can't even keep his head straight. To end the fight, the older male runs up to his rival and rams his head into his opponent's side. The contender collapses to the ground yelling, and still thinking he can fight, but it is clear to all who has won. The 2 females that arrive with the now defeated Sphaerotholus will likely join the victor's herd, but this does not always happen. They may instead simply try to find another male, or group, to integrate with. For the victorious herd leader, he has simply not lost his position. He looks around, knowing from experience that the noise of these fights can travel far and attract unwanted attention. With his superior height, he sees over some bushes, spotting the predators none of the other Sphaerotholus can see. 4 nano-tyrannus have snuck up on the herbivores and are already well within striking distance. The male turns around and runs. The rest of the Sphaerotholus don't see the danger, but quickly follow suit, moving in his direction. The 5-meter carnivores start to run as well. Unlike their larger and more famous relative, Tyrannosaurus rex, Nano-Tyrannosaurus are built for running, with proportionally the longest legs of their entire family, so were quickly gaining on their targets. One was the most obvious choice, the defeated male. He had gotten to his feet, but was zigzagging between the trees and bumped into one of them. Soon he was left behind, and had a Nano-Tyrannus on each side of him. The predators brought down their jaws into his neck and back, forcing him to the ground. He squealed and kicked, but there was no escape, as multiple sets of teeth cut deep into his flesh and pierced his bones. The patient and cunning carnivores making an easy kill, after waiting to see how the 2 males' duel would be settled. The rest of the Sphaerotholus stopped running once they realized the Nano-Tyrannus weren't chasing them anymore. Then they heard more bangs to the north, another crash, and a yelp, signaling the end of a separate fight for supremacy. The group felt a little safer, as that would likely attract more predators away from their herd, but that was not the only sound, as heavy footsteps crushed fallen branches underfoot, and an immense body shifted the trees themselves. A 9-ton bipedal giant walked through the forest, making every one of the Sphaerotholus freeze in place. Story continued after the breakdown section of the video. Hello fellow travelers, and welcome back. Today we will be breaking down one of the most successful genera of dinosaurs from one of the least understood families of dinosaurs, Sphaerotholus. The first remains of Sphaerotholus were 3 skull domes found in Alberta, Canada, and the genus was named in 1943. But the fossils were originally described as a species of Troodon, that being Troodon edmontonensis. These remains were later reassigned to a different Pachycephalosaur genus, that being Stegosaurus. It wasn't until 2002 that a different skull found in New Mexico was named as a new genus, that being Sphaerotholus goodwini. In 2002, while the remains from Canada were later found to be a part of this new genus in 2010. As of recording, 5 species have been attributed to the Sphaerotholus genus, with the name meaning ball dome, for its very circular skull dome. Sphaerotholus was a Pachycephalosaur, more specifically in the Pachycephalosaurinae subfamily. It lived in Canada and the United States during the late Cretaceous, from the late Campanian to the end of the Maastrichtian, between 73 and 66 million years ago. It was around the average size for its family, with the various species ranging between 1.5 meters and 2 meters in length, and weighing between 10 and 40 kilos. A common theme when it comes to Pachycephalosaur remains is that usually only their skulls are found. In fact, usually only their skull domes are found. Sphaerotholus is the same, with basically only the tops of their skulls known and barely anything else. So how do we know this is a unique genus? Doctors Carr and Wilson, who described the genus in 2002, summed up the key feature in the fossils that distinguishes it from other Pachycephalosaurs. To quote, "Differs from all other Pachycephalosaurids, where known in the possession of a parietal squamosal bar that decreases in depth laterally, as seen in caudal view, and is bordered by a single row of nodes and one lateral ventral corner node." End quote. It is also noted that Sphaerotholus is seen as one of the most derived genera of the entire family. Now we'll go over each species, noting that they lived over a period of nearly 10 million years, and have been found across several formations, including the Kirtland, Hell Creek, and Dinosaur Park of the US, plus the Frenchman and Horseshoe Canyon of Canada. The first discovered was the previously mentioned S. edmontonensis, found in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation and properly recognized in 2010. It is distinguished by having paired hornlets at the back of the skull and elongated parietals. It is one of the oldest and largest, living around 70 million years ago and getting to 2 meters long. When the genus itself was named in 2002, it had two species, the first being S. goodwini from the Kirkland Formation of New Mexico, dating to around 70 million years ago. It is the holotype of the genus and so what all other fossils and species are compared to. Second was Pachycephalosaurs, which lived in the Hell Creek approximately 66 million years ago. It has quite a few unique features. To quote, "The species was diagnosed as having a parietal that is widely exposed between the squamosals and wide enough to bear parietal squamosal nodes, a shallower caudal margin of the parietal squamosal shelf. The lateral corner node is reduced in size and located above the ventral margin of the parietal squamosal bar, and the nodes in the lateral margin of the parietal squamosal shelf, reduced on the squamosal and coalescing into a ridge on the postorbital." End quote. In 2023, doctors Woodruff, Scott, and Evans added two more species to the Sphaerotholus genus, both fossils being from immature specimens. The first was S. leonzi, found in the Dinosaur Park Formation, dating it back to around 76 million years ago. It had two rows of nodes that ran along the back of the skull. This is different to all previous species, which only had one row of larger nodes. Finally, we have S. triregnum, which, like Pachycephalosaurs, was found in the Hell Creek, specifically from Montana. It is identifiable by having 3 rows of nodes running along the back of its skull. It should be noted that the validity of this species, especially the newest ones, are subject to change. Since both leonzi and triregnum are both juvenile specimens, we may have a potential repeat of what happened with Pachycephalosaurus, Stygimoloch, and Dracorex on our hands, where it is now believed that those 3 genera are different growth stages of Pachycephalosaurus. That debate is still ongoing, though I'm pretty sure Dracorex is no longer valid. Back to Sphaerotholus. All these species found across such a large stretch of time shows how successful they were. And at a genus level, it's not seen very often, especially in the fossil record. Now, of course, animal families evolve and diverge into new species, with some going extinct and some remaining extant. But animals aren't always changing massively over time. If a body plan or set of traits works over multiple generations, and works through changing environments, there's going to be less pressure to change. Look at coelacanths. thought to be extinct for millions of years, and then they turned up alive off the West Indian Ocean, and have barely changed for almost 420 million years. This specific type of change that we see in the multiple species of Sphaerotholus is called anogenesis, or phyletic evolution. While we have found so little of these animals other than their skulls, it shows that Pachycephalosaurs were quite a species-rich family, with smaller species likely making up a fair percentage of the continent's small herbivore niche. But their dome skulls were likely used exclusively for combat between themselves, and not for predator defense. To use modern head-butting animals like bighorn sheep as an example, they rarely use their weapons to fight off attackers, whereas animals with horns like Cape buffalo do commonly use them against predators. That's not to say that no Pachycephalosaur ever saw a threat and just charged at either to deliberately headbutt it or scare them off. But when it comes to survival, it's far more likely they chose to flee than fight. Indeed, in animals today, the most common predator defense is just to run, fly, or swim away. Why get into a situation where even if you're most likely to win, you can still get injured, when you can just avoid the threat altogether? And if the success of the Sphaerotholus genus across both time and North America is proof of anything, it's that in the late Cretaceous you didn't need the massive horns of the ceratopsians, the armor of the ankylosaurs, the bulk of the hadrosaurs, or the broken speed of the ornithomimosaurs. You just needed good enough generalist traits to survive with little changes. In fact, if the meteor hadn't wiped out all the non-avian dinosaurs, Sphaerotholus may have continued on much the same, outliving other far more specialized and larger dinosaur families. But what do you think of Sphaerotholus? And for my question of the week, do you agree that Pachycephalosaurs were quite common during the end of the Cretaceous? Or do you believe that due to lack of remains, that compared to other herbivorous dinosaurs, they were not rare but less common, or just confined to specific areas? What lesser-known dinosaur would you like me to do a breakdown on next? But until then, please like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching. The Nanotyrannus pull apart their kill. Having only taken one Sphaerotholus, there is barely enough to go around for all four of them, so the higher ranking get the best parts of the carcass, and the rest have to try and scrape any morsels of flesh off the bones. They are busy with this task when they hear something large moving through the forest, and potentially coming straight at them. Their eyes dart back and forth, and then lock onto the foliage to the left of them. From between the massive trees comes a giant theropod, the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex. The smaller tyrannosaurs lower themselves, ready to run for their lives, as the giant is heading straight for them. In its jaws are two ornithomimous carcasses, and he walks with a noticeable limp. The Nanotyrannus are barely acknowledged by the giant, who keeps moving in a straight line. The smaller, nimbler predators give him plenty of space, wanting to keep their distance but hoping a piece of the two broken ornithomimous bodies fall off so they can get a bite. They are not so lucky, and the wounded male tyrant limps onwards, leaving the Nanotyrannus and their kill behind them. One of the nanos goes back to tearing at the carcass, but the others begin to cautiously follow their massive neighbor, though at a safe distance. They have no idea how long his journey with the two bodies was going to take, and that meant they might have an opportunity to get a bite from one of his kills. A dangerous quarry to follow, but a wounded Rex would not be able to defend his kill nearly as well as a healthy one. And stealing from the kills of their much larger cousins was not an uncommon activity for the wily Nanotyrannus.